Seems you've been involved in certain illegal activities.
There's a new special deputy. Been brought in from the city. Wants to work it out so everybody can do some business.
Is that so?
Tom Hardy is the baddest mother on the planet in Lawless.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to another exciting week at the movies. This week we'll be talking about Lawless.
I'm a Bondurant. We don't lay down for nobody.
I've seen almost 24 films since The Dark Knight Rises, and honestly it's been pretty difficult to sing praises. However, if you asked me what the best film I saw in the last month was, I would say Lawless. Lawless is a perfectly paced, exciting, and sometimes intense picture with some wonderful performances across the board from Shia LaBeouf, Gary Oldman, Jessica Chastain, and so many more. The best performance comes from the show-stealing Tom Hardy as Forrest Bondurant. Forrest is the eldest of 3 Bondurant brothers and the head of a powerful group of bootleggers in Prohibition-era Virginia that is unwilling to cooperate with local law enforcement when they come under new management of Charlie Rakes, played by Guy Pearce. Charlie is a big league cop from Chicago who comes down to small-town Franklin, Virginia, thinking he can easily use local law enforcement to regulate the sale of alcohol. It's a win-win game for Charlie because if he regulates the alcohol, then he can take a cut, and if not, then he can make some big arrests. But what he never expected was the Bondurant boys. When Forrest is asked by the local alcohol dealers to give the law a percentage, he kindly flips them the bird and prepares for his whole world to get a lot more challenging. However, the heart and soul of this story lies in the actions of the youngest Bondurant boy, Jack, played by Shia LaBeouf in a really wonderful performance. Unlike his brothers, Jack is a soft-spoken, smart, and kind young man who seems incapable of great violence. A large part of what gets you in this film is the arc of his character and finding out what will push him to that great violence his brothers are so easily capable of. Smartly written, well shot, and very well acted, Lawless is the best movie you will see this weekend. 3.5 stars for Lawless.
It's the glow of cyber capital. So radiant and seductive.
Do you ever get the feeling that you don't know what's going on?
Well, I don't know about Pattinson, but I certainly did after watching David Cronenberg's latest Cosmopolis, a movie where Robert Pattinson's character literally only gets out of his limo to eat or have sex, which he does just about as much in the limo as well. So the rest of the 109 minutes is just in the limo. What can you do in a limo? Well, a number of things. You can eat, have sex, get a prostate exam, but 90% of the time, they are talking. Truthfully, this movie is just a series of conversations to fill the running time on his character Packer's ridiculously slow journey across town to get a haircut. He has a conversation with Jay Baruchel about future markets and the irony of their position in the world. He has sex with Juliette Binoche, and then he has a conversation about marriage. He meets his new wife and has a conversation about sex. This happens like 3 times every single time that he has to eat a meal. The longest and strangest of all the conversations is one he has with Samantha Morton about, and I'm totally guessing here, how future markets relate to the world, how the world is changed by the market, and how there is really no way to comprehend it. Well, I certainly didn't comprehend it. This is a movie that is basically saying a whole bunch of nothing, and it all leads to nothing more than anything that you could get from dropping heavy drugs and talking about the first thing that came to your mind. I think I just figured it all out. 2 stars for Cosmopolis.
Well, that's weird. There aren't any seams.
What does that mean?
I think whoever made this didn't want anybody to open it.
The Possession is not the worst film I've seen this year, but it still had no place being made. It's basically an exorcism movie with literally every weak scare or cliche that has ever existed in every exorcism movie ever. The only thing that you might call original is that this exorcism movie is not a Catholic exorcism movie, but a Jewish one. However, that only gets played up for about 5 minutes, and then it's back on to the checklist of every single thing that you have seen in a million movies before, which left me laughing more than jumping and never created any scares. The plot here is basically that baseball coach Clyde, played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, has screwed up his marriage to his wife Stephanie, played by Kira Sedgwick, and bought a new house. In his first weekend out with his daughters, they buy a weird-looking box from hell that possesses his daughter and makes her do evil stuff like stabbing her dad or making someone's eyes bleed. Of course, nobody asked the right questions for like 40 minutes of the runtime in an effort to run out the clock, and the audience's brain cells do the suffering. Boring, predictable, and just like every other horror flick, The Possession is one of the worst movies I've seen this year, and the worst movie you could possibly watch this weekend. 1 star for The Possession.
The Oscar season is quickly approaching, so we thought we'd take the time to talk about the best movies of the year so far.
There have been a lot of really good films this year, and I honestly believe that so far this year, commercial films have been much better than the indie dramas. However, all this is bound to change in the next coming months, so I thought that this was the right time to go ahead and give my 5 best films of the year. The 5th movie that we're going to talk about today is, ironically, the first movie I saw all year, The Grey. A movie that I would never have expected to like as much as I did, and didn't give as good a review when it came out as it should have. I should have given a perfect 4 out of 4 stars, but at the time I had seen so many movies coming out of the Oscar season that I just couldn't believe that the first movie in January, which is usually Hollywood's time to, puke out all the garbage, was this great a movie. From the opening sequence to the closing sequence, it defies expectation and delivers one of a kind experience that if I dig deeply, I don't think I've really felt before. A first-rate thriller that also works exceptionally well as a bit of soul-searching existentialism as these people are stuck out in the wild and debate their very mortality. Number 5, The Grey.
Dear Susie, here's my plan.
Dear Sam, my answer is yes.
Dear Susie, 1.
Dear Sam, where?
Dear Susie, walk 400 yards due north from your house to the dirt path which has not got any name on it. Turn right and follow to the end.
Number 4 is the clever and extremely quirky comedy Moonrise Kingdom. I love this movie. This movie was absolutely a delight from beginning to end. And ironically, it's the only one appearing in my top 5 that I've only seen once. In fact, my top 3 films I've seen like 4 times each. The reason for this is nothing more than the fact that I just never had a chance to see it, and it played like 20 miles away from where I'm at, so I just didn't want to drive out and see it. However, even though I haven't seen the film in like 3 or 4 months, I still remember it more fondly than almost every other movie I've seen this year. As a matter of fact, I actually remember it more fondly every single time I think about it. How clever it is, how funny it was, how great all the acting was, how wonderful the little kids were. It's a movie that's so unique and enjoyable that I honestly believe it has a small chance of being remembered come Academy Awards season for Best Picture. Number 4, Moonrise Kingdom.
Take us home! If you don't stop it, it won't be your home to go back to.
Where's that door open? Cut it off! Cut it off!
The number 3 film that I saw so far this year was Prometheus. Now, I know it could be argued that Prometheus is the most polarizing film of the summer. Some people seem to just hate the direction this film went about halfway through because it didn't answer many of the big questions that it posed about existentialism. Some people hated it because it even had that stuff in it at all and were disappointed that it wasn't more of a horror pick like Alien. Others thought that there were like gaping plot holes that you could fit a truck through. I respect everyone's right to their opinions, but I just think that they're all plain wrong. To me, the saddest thing about the current state of our world is that we have all but given up on exploration in the reality of our world. But in film, we still have the ability to explore, and I haven't felt like I went out and explored something this big and this wondrous and this beautifully put together, asking these big, huge questions with characters that really seem to be well drawn out. Yes, some of them were one-dimensional, but the leads were really well drawn out. And then at the same time, a horror pick that I really felt like it had me on the edge of my seat. It was well filmed, it was well put together. There were individual sequences in this movie that were actually, you know, like so good that they were awe-inspiring, like the sequence where Michael Fassbender finds the core of the ship and that light show that is given there with the great score by Mark Streitenfeld. It's just a wonderful movie that's well put together, and honestly I found kind of gutsy in what is typically a remake and sequel summer. So, number 3, Prometheus. My number 2 movie, and honestly what I think to be one of the funnest movies I have ever watched in my life, is The Avengers. Now, this movie is not an exceptionally well-written flick, but it's pretty darn good considering what it is that we're watching. And the bottom line here is that when we're children, especially these comic book children like I am, or people that grew up with all these superheroes on our televisions the entire time that we were growing up, we grew up with huge imaginations. And in our imaginations, we believed in the grandest things. And that never happened in movies. Yes, there are big action spectacles, but if you go back, if you go to the DVD, you know, if you go to Blockbuster or something right now and you look and you want to try and get a DVD or Blu-ray and find something that is as wondrous as your imagination, it's never really existed. And to me, that's what the Avengers does. The Avengers, while not being really any of my favorite superheroes, I'm a Batman, Superman, Spider-Man guy, it doesn't really matter because these characters have all been well drawn and were given to us over the, the course of the last couple of years, so their development is there. What we end up getting is a last hour or so that is so amazingly exciting and such a visual and exciting spectacle that actually reaches the heights of my imagination. I honestly could probably watch this movie over and over again, and will. The number 2 movie so far in 2012, The Avengers.
Mr. Wayne.
The best movie to me of 2012 by a long shot is The Dark Knight Rises. And honestly, this doesn't come as much of a surprise to me as The Dark Knight was, because when The Dark Knight came out, I had been a person who had never put a superhero movie or anything of that kind even in my top 20 or 30 of any years. I mean, it's not like I don't like them, but for the most part, I don't take them as serious, dramatic pieces of art. This movie and The Dark Knight to me were so exceptional, just so well put together, that it's impossible to not consider this a Best Picture contender. It's exceptionally well written. It's put together with such great craftsmanship. The actual cinematography in this film, if something beats this year, it will blow my mind. 72 minutes of IMAX footage shot to the best possible quality that there is, with outstanding sound, a great score by Hans Zimmer, and then we haven't even gotten into all of the things that it actually does for film. This is going to change the way that people move along with trilogies. We now can actually end a series with these superheroes where there's actually closure and we feel as if we've gotten an entire story out of these characters. We can actually feel that these characters can be real. We can actually feel that we can tell super important things without making huge metaphors out of them. This is very clearly a movie about a terrorist getting a nuclear bomb and putting a major city to ransom, which is something that is of extreme fear in the post 9/11 world. And even with all the socio-economical and political references that go on in this movie, it still manages to take one of the most important literary characters of the 20th and the 21st century and successfully close it out for the first time ever. This is a masterpiece. The best film of 2012, The Dark Knight Rises.
That's going to do it for this week's show. Be sure to tune in next week on redcarpetcrash.com and thankyouFW.com.
And as always, we thank you for watching. Go.
The Oscar Squeezin.
And